Welcome to the Steps in Purpose podcast with Edie Ann. This podcast explores emotional awareness, faith, and purposeful living through short, reflective conversations designed to help you notice where you are and take your next step with clarity. Thanks for being here. Who are you when you're not striving? If you remember last week when I was asked that question can feel a little exposing because I think a lot of people have been striving for so long that they hardly know who they are without it. And that was what that question was trying to expose on me when they asked me. They know who they are when they are pushing and fixing and carrying and proving and helping and managing and trying to stay ahead of whatever might fall apart next. They know who they are when they are being productive and responsible and useful, yet take all of that away for a moment, right? And a deeper question starts to rise. Who am I when I'm not performing for my worth? Think about that. I think this really matters because striving can hide in places that look good on the outside. It can wear the clothes of hard work, discipline, responsibility, ambition, service, and even faith. And yes, we're going to expose myself even a little bit in this episode because this is me. And I'm peeling away the layers of the onion here a little bit because it can wear the clothes, right, of that hard work. And while there is nothing wrong with working hard or showing up, striving has a different energy to it. Striving feels like pressure. It feels like proving. It feels like if I don't do this or if I do not keep going, something important about me might fall apart. That is why striving usually lives lower on the emotion gauge than people think. And if you're not familiar with the emotion gauge, I created the emotion gauge, and it is a way for us to name our emotions and allow ourselves to get closer to joy, which is a place that God created for us in our souls. Striving often sounds productive, yet underneath it, there's usually fear. There's usually pressure, urgency, insecurity, sometimes even exhaustion. A lot of striving lives in survival, and that's where mine came from, because survival says, I have to keep going. I have to keep carrying this. I have to make this work. I have to hold it all together. Then after enough time, striving often spills into frustration because the heart gets tired. That is where the inner voice starts sounding sharper. Why does everything feel so hard? Why am I the only one carrying all of this? Why can I never just breathe? Right? And sometimes it can dip into victim too. Because once a person has been striving long enough, they can start feeling trapped by the very pattern that they've been living in. They may start to believe life is always going to demand more than they can give. They may feel stuck in the role of being the one who carries, handles, fixes, and sacrifices. Why is it always me? So even though striving can look strong from the outside, it often has roots in some very tender places on the inside. I think about the people or the person who feels restless every time they sit down. I used to joke about this. I used to say, and I remember a time that I actually thought that this was a good thing. I can't meditate. I can't sit still long enough. The moment I would stop doing, there would be a voice that would start whispering that would say, I should be doing more. Why are you sitting? I should be fixing something. I should be answering something. I should be checking something, planning something, working on something, improving something, right? Rest does not feel restful to those type of people. It actually feels uncomfortable. Peace doesn't feel natural. It feels suspicious. And that usually tells me striving has become more than a habit. It's become identity. It's become who you are. And I know a lot of you listening can relate to this. Because when striving becomes identity, stillness starts feeling threatening. You no longer only do striving. You start becoming someone who only knows how to feel valuable while in motion. That is why this question is so important. Who are you when you are not striving? Who are you when you are not earning approval? Who are you when you are not proving your worth? Who are you when you are not trying to stay ahead of disappointment? When you are not holding everything together for everybody else? Do you understand the question? That is where the deeper work begins, because those questions start revealing whether your identity is rooted in truth or wrapped around your performance. I think a lot of us learned striving, honestly. Maybe life taught you that lazy was rest, right? Or that rest was lazy. If people around you were working and you were sitting down, how many times did your parents say, hey, what are you doing? Don't be sitting on your haunches. Get up. Help. Right? We were taught that sitting idle was being lazy. Maybe love felt tied to achievement, right? Maybe praise came when you were helpful, productive, capable, and strong, right? Maybe you learned early that being on top of things kept you safe. Maybe being useful made you feel secure. Maybe carrying more made you feel needed. If that is true, then of course striving started feeling normal. It makes sense. Yet making sense of a pattern and staying trapped in a pattern are two different things. Okay? At some point, the question becomes whether the thing that once helped you now owns you. That is where the emotion gauge helps so much. Survival says, I have to keep moving or everything will fall apart. Frustration says, I am tired of living under all of this pressure. Victim says, why does this always feel like it all falls on me? Hopeful starts whispering, maybe there is another way to live. Empowered starts asking what belief is feeding this pattern. Aligned begins resting in a different truth altogether. Aligned also says, I do not have to force what God is asking me to trust. I do not have to prove what God has already spoken over me. I do not have to earn what He has already given, which is joy. That is such a powerful shift. And when you learn the skills through the emotion gauge, you can get there. And as human beings, we don't stay there, and it's okay. But once you learn the skills, it's easier to get back. Because striving says my value comes from what I do. Alignment says my value was never up for negotiation. Striving says keep pushing. Alignment says you can breathe. Striving says if you stop, you will lose something. Alignment says when you stop forcing, you may finally hear what is true. I think that is why some people feel so uncomfortable when they begin leaving striving behind, right? When they stop striving. It's not only about changing a habit, it's about meeting yourself without the role. It's about discovering whether you know who you are when there is nothing to prove. That's hard. And for a lot of people, that can feel tender at first, right? That can be a little raw because striving has been your armor. It's made you feel capable, safe, needed in some cases. Yet, armor can protect you and still keep you from fully living. Right? So who are you underneath that armor? Maybe you are someone who is already worthy even when you are resting. Maybe you are somebody whose presence matters as much as your output. Maybe you are someone who does not have to earn love by exhausting yourself. Maybe you are someone God is inviting into peace, not just productivity. Maybe you are someone who has mistaken pressure for purpose and is finally being shown the difference. I think that's where hope begins to rise, right? Hope says maybe I do not have to keep living like this. Maybe I do not have to be driven by purpose to have a meaningful life. Maybe there is a version of me that still works hard, still shows up, still loves deeply, and still lives with intention, yet does not do it from fear. Maybe there is a version of me that can be faithful without being frantic. And you know what? That movement does matter because it's the shift from living driven to living grounded. It's a shift from being proving, right, to trusting. It's a shift from over-functioning to alignment. And when that shift starts happening, your whole life begins to feel different. Your thoughts soften, your reactions change, your body exhales, right? And your relationships become more honest. You begin to realize that you were never meant to build your identity on pressure. So maybe this episode is really an invitation to get honest about where striving has been shaping you, right? Where do you feel pressure to prove? Where do you feel like rest has to be earned? Where do you feel like your value rises and falls with your output? And underneath all of that, who are you when you are not striving? Listen, if this spoke to you, like I know there's a lot of you out there that feel this way because I feel this way. So if this spoke to you and you want to learn more, maybe you want to learn more about the emotion gauge, then I'm going to encourage you to head on over to my website at www.edieanne.com. That's EDIEANNE.com. Because listen, you guys, your next step really does matter. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep stepping in purpose.